Ready to go.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Today we're going to look at something that happens to a lot of people when they walk out there and see the grass is starting to grow and they need to cut their yard for the first time. They pull the cord on the mower, nothing. Now the first thing you want to do is go ahead and replace the gas in it, and sometimes that'll take care of it. If the mower's in really good shape and you used really good gas and you used fuel stabilizer, then just simply replacing the gas will save about 90% of them. But today we're going to go over what happens when replacing the glass doesn't work. Okay, the motor we're working on today is this little 500E Briggs & Stratton. And you can see the air filter is obviously on wonky. Oh, it's on upside down and backwards. So they smashed that up pretty bad. Now, I see a lot of oil on the air filter, so let's check the oil level. Now, the oil level looks pretty normal. It's a touch low. But if it had been high, I would have thought that the carburetor was possibly leaking gas back into the engine. But that means that the float's fine, and we have to move on with cleaning up the jets. Okay, let's get the screws out of there. We're going to grab one of our handy little magnets to keep our screws on so we don't lose anything while we're working. These come in really handy because not only do you keep the screws in place when you finish, if you've got a screw left, you realize right off the bat you've got a screw left. You can see these are entirely different kinds of screws, so if you lost one of these, you might grab the wrong one and replace it. Okay, one more screw? One more screw. One on the outside on this cover. And that's another machine screw. Okay. Let's pull our air cleaner off and see what we've got. Now, a lot of people hate these little plastic carburetors, but I don't mind them. They're pretty easy to work on. So we're going to ease this out. Gently, of course. Now, at this point, we're going to fill the fuel line. The fuel line feels okay. Let's check the fuel. She's got some fuel in her. Okay, since she's got a little bit of gas left in her, we're going to go ahead and kink the fuel line for now and keep it right there. And remove it. And then try to ever so gently pry it off the carburetor. Now, before we're done with this, we're going to go ahead and remove the fuel tank and put a new fuel line on it. There we go. She's coming a little bit at a time. And you want to be gentle because it's a plastic carburetor. And if you break this little gas filler, then that's the end of that carburetor. Okay. Now let's gently rotate the carburetor off. And there we go. And remember, every step of doing this, take lots of pictures. So let's take this over to the bench and clean her up a little bit. Okay, we're going to start off with cleaning the jets, because the jets will just make this carburetor stop. We're going to spill a little bit of fuel, but not enough to matter. And it looks like we need more screwdriver for that one. There, move just a little bit. And this really is the worst part of working on one of these carburetors, is getting this bolt to let go. After they've been on for a few years, they're pretty determined. So we'll do that. And we'll find a small screwdriver. And there we go, she broke the seal. You can see this little rubber O-ring. Holy cow. Now, I do see things in the gas occasionally, but we've got a whole wildlife preserve here. That's not good. And that's not dirt from an eroding fuel line or anything. That's just dirt. So we're going to go ahead and pull the jets out. And we're going to pull the float off also and clean up this carburetor really well. Now I've got an ultrasonic cleaner that I use to clean carburetors, but you really don't need it for one of these. Of course, I use it because I've got it. But once you've got everything off the body, you should be able to clean it up with just about the tools you've got on hand. So now to remove this little white part, this is the jets. So I just put a screwdriver under there and wedged until it popped loose. And again, this is held by a little rubber O-ring. And that's the magic hole. Clean that up, and you're usually 99% of the time good to go. And we use floral wire that we got from, I guess, Dollar Tree, maybe Walmart. So we're going to run it in a little top hole, make sure she's clear. We're going to run it through here, make sure she's clear. And take a look down inside. Okay, air is definitely blowing through that jet well. And I'm beyond why this one wasn't leaking gas with this much wildlife inside it. It even feels grainy inside the bowl. So we're going to have to clean up the whole system. We're going to leave this off to the side and run this through the cleaner. Now that we've got her all cleaned up, let's get her all back together. So put the needle back on the float and put the pin in. This one's a little different than a lot of them in that the pin for the float and whatnot just sort of clips in here. Well, lucky for me, I've got a little screwdriver with a notch in it that comes in really handy for stuff like this. And there you go. This would be your favorite tool in the world. All I did is take my cutting wheel, make sure she runs freely. Now I'm going to blow into this and then move the float up and down to make sure that she's working correctly. Yep, and she looks good. Okay, so let's put the jets back in. Now the jets can only fit in one way, like this. If you try to put it in the other way, you can see it's nowhere near seated. Try to put it in this way and it slides all the way in. And just use your thumbs, ease it all the way in, and that's it. She's back together. And we're about 1/2 inch away from a cleaned up, ready to go carburetor. Now note this little hole here fits this. So you don't want to put this bowl on like this. You want to make sure you put it on correctly. If you took pictures, you would see the differences in it when you're putting it back together. And as I said before, lots of pictures. Pictures are your friend. Okay, and of course she goes together a whole lot easier than she came apart. If this is your first time doing one of these carburetors, congratulations. At this point, you've got a rebuilt carburetor. These screws, their whole job is to keep the bowl attached because you've got that big O-ring which seals everything. So let's take her over to the mower and get her back on and see if we don't have a good running lawnmower. Now, just yesterday or the day before, I had somebody ask me where the screen was on a gas tank. Because they'd heard of it, but they'd never seen one. And there it is, inside the tank. It's kind of hard to find the perfect angle here. There you go. That's the screen in the gas tank. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put the lid back on it. It's not going to be as in the way as you might think. But if you're more comfortable with a lot of room to work, go ahead and leave it off for this part. And don't lose these screws. These screws for the lids for these are specific to this machine. Okay, next up is getting the carburetor realigned and back on the machine. Notice this little black gasket and the little white ring behind it? Those are important. And now, the magic. Make sure you do everything in the reverse order that you took it apart. So the last thing we did was take the carb off the linkage. So that's the first thing we do, putting it back together. And then before we put it all the way on, we remove the fuel line. So that's the next thing we do. And now, We'll very carefully and gently line her up, get her to slide into place. And that little O-ring supplies the seal to the engine. And believe it or not, there's no bolts to the engine, just that little O-ring. This backing plate holds the whole mess together. Let's see now, we'll put you on like this. Easy peasy. Okay, now I've got all my tools back to organized. So, gently, 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 gently. Gently is always your friend when you're doing this. I might have to replace this primer bulb. It seems to work okay, but it's not pretty. We're definitely going to have to get an air filter for her, though. Whoops. Okay, and that should be just about it. The only thing we've got left is to get the little fuel clamp back in place. And of course, clean this mess up and get a new air filter. Okay, first start in, oh, who knows how long. Oh, I forgot. Got to prime this one. That should be more than enough. Yeah, she runs good. Everything seems to work. She's ready to go. So it looks like we got a pretty good little mower on our hands. Now that little white part that we pulled out of the bottom of the carburetor, that's the magic in the carburetor. That's where the jets are in that particular style, that black plastic carburetor. You clean them up and you're good to go. The rest of the carburetor you could probably just not even touch, but I like to clean it up just for the sake of cleaning it up when I've got it apart. So, for all you new people out there, if you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. It's free and it's what we work for. So thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.